We are on lesson 5 of this unit of narrative writing. Today's lesson, you're going to learn how to write introductions for your narrative piece, the beginning of your story. So, to introduce you to this concept, I'd like you to try this exercise. I'm going to be listing off a bunch of words. I would like you to try to remember as many words as you can. Obviously, you cannot cheat. You shall not rewind this video. You shall not pause this video. It is really not meant to impress anybody. It's purely just an exercise that I want to prove a point. So, as I list these words, you are not actually to pick up a pencil yet. You do have a spot you'll see in your notes to write these words down. You have to wait until I tell you to pick your pencil up. It'll be about 15 seconds after I'm done reading the list. So, are you ready? Well, here is your list of words. Candle, maple, subway, poison, tiger, ceiling, lawyer, ocean, paper, garbage, thunder, sofa, mountain, dollar, wagon, doorbell. Now you must wait 15 seconds before picking up the pencil. I'll tell you when to pick up the pencil. Okay, pick up the pencil, pause this video, and start writing. Okay, you ready to find out how you did? So I'm going to take a look at the VIT list here, and you can look with me, and here is the list that I just read. So you could pause the video and see how you did. So how did you do? Well, I imagine you probably got some of these ones right, maybe some of these ones right, and maybe one or two right in here. But I imagine that you did much better with these beginning words and these words at the end, but the middle was probably not as successful for you. And if that wasn't the case for you, maybe you're just a little different. That's fine. Um, so let's go back to the whole point of this, why we're doing this. This is called the primacy recency effect, and that's what I'm really demonstrating here. Just like the list of words, people, whenever they read something or learn something, they're going to remember the beginning quite a bit, just like those beginning words. They're also going to remember quite a bit at the end as well. However, it's the middle that we usually forget or we usually lose out on some of those details. So my question to you is, why does this show the importance of introductions and conclusions? Well, it shows that they're important because your audience is going to be remembering your introduction the most, as well as those conclusions. We'll talk about their importance at a later time. Are there any other reasons why introductions are important? Well, you think about it, it's your first impression for a reader, and first impressions are very important. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of your story. So what do we want to do when we do these introductions? And remember, you don't need to take notes unless there's that note in the top right corner there. So we want to hook the audience. We want to introduce the theme of our story. We want to establish the setting of the story and then establish the mood, how you want the audience to feel. So first let's talk about hooking the audience, catching the audience's attention. Here's a question for you. How long does it take the average audience to judge your writing? The answer? You only get 7 seconds before they make a judge. And this sounds kind of mean, but guess what? You do this too whenever you're a reader as well, whether you try to or not. Within 7 seconds, you kind of have an idea whether this is going to be a book or a reading that you're going to like, or if it's just not going to be your cup of tea. And fair or not, that's just the way it is. So what are you going to do about it? Those first 7 seconds are very important. Those first words you put down in your story are very important. So you need to catch their attention. You never get a second chance to make that first impression. So here are a few hook strategies that you could use. And I apologize, this actually should be something different. I'll let you know. First, you can tell a kind of a story within a story, like a little mini story at the beginning of your story. That sounds silly, but if you've ever seen the movie Up, they do that. They have a quick little, actually, kind of over a long period of time, a little story, and it's very cute, and it catches your attention, and you're hooked on the movie. You could ask a question. People love thinking about questions and getting them to think. A shocking statement or a statistic. I have here like using mystery. So maybe it's some kind of thing where the audience doesn't know the answer and they want to read more to find out. That's what this one should say. And then a quote. People like to think about things, and quotes often get people to think. So, I would like you to take a little pause and think about some of these strategies that I said could catch the audience's attention. You see that there's a note in the top right here, so it's asking you to write something down. I'd like you to pick three. So, how could you use three of these strategies to introduce a story that you plan to write? Remember, you've been kind of pre-writing for this story, so think a little more now. Pick three of these, and you don't need to write it word for word, but maybe say what you would do. Just kind of summarize what you would do using one of these strategies. So pause the video right now and take a moment to do that. Okay, we're picking up. Hopefully that was a valuable exercise for you, and that's given you a few different strategies. Maybe you like one of them, how they turned out, or a couple of them, how they turned out. Maybe another one didn't go so well, and that's just fine. Let's talk about introducing theme. I won't go too much into this since I feel like we've already talked about theme quite a bit. Just remember that theme is usually a lesson that the story is teaching you. So we talked about a few different ways that themes are developed too. You can have the character grow and learn the lesson during the story. You could have the character having a conflict, either externally or internally, about the lesson, trying to decide whether that lesson, maybe the lesson helps them solve the conflict. And then dialogue. You can also just kind of talk about the theme or have their character think about the theme a little bit. So I would like you to get out a highlighter or a pen or pencil and think about this with me. Where do we see that in the story we read earlier called The Glorious Whitewasher? Where is that theme introduced? So you could take a few minutes here, pause the video, and try to highlight or underline, if you don't have a highlighter, areas in this paragraph where you see the theme being introduced. All right, pause. All right, thank you for doing that work. So I'm going to show you now what I had, and it's okay if you disagree with me a little bit. I'll just explain why I underlined what I underlined. So the first thing I underlined was kind of a conflict going on inside of Tom's head here. He's thinking about all the fun he had planned for the day, but at the same time he's got to work, right? These free boys are going to come along. They're going to make fun of him. The thought of it is just burning him on the inside. He's got some inner conflict right now. What do I do about this? And then at the end, we kind of see some character growth right at the end of this paragraph. He figures something out, right? And it doesn't tell you exactly what he's figured out, but we do know later that he's figured out basically the theme of the story. He's going to make it really hard for some of these boys to paint, and because of that, they're going to want to paint. So that's where I see the theme. And like I said, if you disagree with me a little bit, that's okay. I think the exercise itself where you're thinking about this is valuable. I'd like you to do one more exercise then here too. I would like you to kind of write a little bit of a introduction which includes a theme for this little story I put out right here. So let's say a theme would be you need teamwork to accomplish great tasks. And you can need that on the basketball court, you could use that at the workplace, whatever. I'd like you to take a moment and write a way that you could introduce this theme in an introduction. You could actually write the introduction or just write how you would introduce a theme like that in an introduction. Okay, so let's pause the video now again and give that a shot. All right, So hopefully that was valuable for you. I will take a look at those when I come back tomorrow. The next thing you want to do in an introduction is establish the setting. Remember, the setting is the time and the place in which your story happens. And I highlighted place because that's probably the easier one, or probably the more important one, where you can really paint a picture for your audience, right? And that's what I say here. You really want to create that clear picture for your reader right away. It really helps catch their attention, and they can really imagine themselves in your story a lot more when you do this. So I would like you to take a moment to think about how Tolstoy does this in the Confessed Crime story. So I'd like you to take a moment to pause this video and try finding examples of the setting getting established. All right, so highlight or underline. Ready? Pause. Okay, thank you for your work. Once again, I'm going to show you what I have, and I'll explain why I put it there. And if you disagree with me, that's okay too. So the first thing I put, obviously just talking about the town of Vladimir, and then just kind of what his possessions are, where this beginning of the story is taking place, probably around his shops and his house. Another thing I found was that he's going to be, it's obviously the summer, so that they're explaining the time there. And then also just the fair at Nizhny, where he's going to be heading. So it sounds like he's going to be taking a trip. That kind of shows you the setting a little bit. Not a whole lot I found beyond that. If you found something else, great. That's something that maybe they could have done a little bit better at the beginning of this story. I'd like you to have a little practice now, so we're going to have you pause one more time. But I'd like you to write a brief introduction. It doesn't need to be anything very long, but have it include your alarm clock going off. That's all I require, so you can kind of fill in any of the other details. What I would like you to do is to focus especially on establishing your setting. So please pause your video now and write a brief introduction where you establish the setting. All right, thank you for your work there. You can show that to me tomorrow when I get back as well. The last thing we want to do in the introduction then is establish the mood. Remember, the mood is the feeling that your reader gets from a piece of writing. And there's a few ways you can do that. You can describe the setting, which you've already probably done if you've followed the instructions here. Precise words can also create mood for the reader, like where you say tiptoe, not walk. That makes the reader a little bit nervous. Dialogue can establish the mood where you have someone say something where they're sharing their feelings, perhaps. And then when you show a character's emotions, not just tell it. So an example of a text with little or no mood would be something like this. I looked at my house and walked away. However, if you could say the same exact thing in a way but include a lot of things that add mood, it makes your story a lot better and makes your introduction a lot better. So, for example, you could say, I turned and stared, knowing it was the last time I would gaze at the house I grew up in. I slowly paced away as the bulldozer approached. Just a couple things. You see that I have stare instead of look. I have gaze. I have paced instead of walked. It just kind of shows a little bit more kind of somber sadness in the character here. And I imagine the reader gets that too. And it's kind of doing this, right? It's showing that character's emotion. I never had to say that I was kind of sad or kind of somber, but I think you understood that when you read it, even though I never said it. And that's what creates mood in a story. So I'd like you to think about this in The Glorious Whitewasher too. Where do you see the author establishing mood in this introduction in The Glorious Whitewasher? So take a pause. I'd like you to highlight and show me what you found. All right, thanks for that. I'm going to have you compare it to what I did then. And remember, you can disagree with me, and that's fine. So one thing I saw here is that just Tom's energy did not last. It's kind of a fancy way for saying that he was tired. So that's where he's showing the character's emotions using precise words. Another thing it shows here is his sorrows multiplied. It could have said that he was sad, But Mark Twain decides to take it a little further. His sorrow is multiplied. He's really sad. That creates some mood for the reader. I also showed really some precise words here, tripping along with all sorts of delicious expeditions, instead of just saying they're coming and they're planning some fun things. He's getting really precise, and that for me, it kind of just makes me, I don't know, it makes it kind of light. It shows what the boys are going to be up to. Right here, the thought of it burned him like fire. Instead of saying that he was mad and he was angry, I like how precise the author is here, really showing the emotions inside Tom. And then last part here, it kind of shows how the moment was dark and hopeless. That's creating some mood for me. And then an inspiration. Instead of just saying an idea, an inspiration. It gets you excited when you hear that, right? Nothing less than a great, magnificent inspiration. So that's how the Glorious Whitewasher created mood for me. A lot of precise words, and then a lot of just like showing the character's emotions too. So here's your last chance to do some practice. I would like you to write maybe just really specific here, just a little sentence or two where you have no mood, and then create a mood. So basically write two examples here. Use graduation for your topic. So you could be a character graduating from something, maybe from school in 8th grade or high school. But try writing one sentence without a lot of mood, or really any mood, and then create a sentence with a lot of mood, kind of like what I did up here. So that's your last task for today. Pause your video and give it a shot. All right, thank you for your work. So I'll take a look at that tomorrow, and thanks for listening in. Just one thing to keep in mind is that whenever you do write a narrative piece for writing groups, this is how you'll be getting scored, or one of the ways that you'll be getting scored. Your audience will actually decide how well did you do each of these things. Did you hook the audience, establish a setting, mood? Did you introduce a theme? So just try to keep that in mind whenever you do a narrative piece.